Okay,
When
go
I
ahead.
was young, I always like to watch all these Chinese movies where they send energy, from their hand and then do all the fighting and all these things. Never knew that one day I would meet somebody who could do this.
Hi, I'm David Lee, and this is the Dance of the Dragon channel. I'm back after an absence of more than a year. I decided to come back because I've been encouraged by friends and other teachers to come back and make these videos again. I was a bit skeptical and I wasn't sure because part of the YouTube thing is to create novelty all the time. And I needed to find a way to kind of balance the fact that any of these arts are endless repetition of the same thing, doing the same exercises every day. And that's a big part of how one progresses. So having to come up with something novel every week is difficult, to say the least, or at least it's counter to the idea that one must continue to practice the same form for years and years until your body gets it. The channel will take a slightly different form now. It's not just going to be me doing exercises or trying to do hour-long classes. But I also want to present you a deeper look at my own personal experience and the things that I've been through, not just Qigong, but flexibility in general, meditation, the process of aging. And so I'm taking a different approach to this channel. I recently had the opportunity to spend some time with Master Dennis Wang and Master Yap Bo Heong. And they're both amazing. You can find them on the Martial Man. I had a few days with them and I was able to record some conversations with them. This first video is about how they got started in their arts, how they got introduced to them. And I have some other videos in the can that I'll present to you, as well as other things. So without further ado, here's my conversation with them.
When I was young, I always like to watch all these Chinese movies where they send energy, from their hand and then do all the fighting and all these things. Never knew that one day I would meet somebody who could do this. And it was in 2003 up in China. During this period, I was doing business in China. I met this guy, who was able to fa qi or externalize qi to move people without having to touch them. So I was very, very curious. So I sat down and watched him for at least 1 hour taking photographs. Told him that I took many photographs of you. I want to send it to you, and got to know him. Then I asked him, what is this, that you are able to do and people move? Did they move themselves or did you move them? Then he looked at me, what do you think, Did you think they are so stupid, they just go there and move? So I said, okay, I asked the wrong question. I said, what is this? So he explained to me, this is Qi Gong. You use the external Qi and then you externalize it through your body to affect the electromagnetic field of the other person. So I asked him, how does it work? He said, it's very simple. He said, in our blood, we all have iron. When you are trained in Qigong and when you're proficient in Qigong, your iron become magnetic. And then that is through your training. The longer you train, the stronger your electromagnetic field is. And you develop your Yi, which is your intent. He said the more you train, the more quiet you are, the more stillness you can get. You can bring out the Qi. And I had no time to talk to him. Then we left. The one day I visited him in one part of China called Shenzhen, where we stayed. So as soon as I got in, after drinking tea, he just asked me to stand up, and he activated Qi on me from the back. I was moving so profusely that I was not able to stop, you know. So he said, wow, you're so relaxed. What did you learn? Of course, I wouldn't dare to say I learned Qigong with a master like that. I said, oh, I learned some stretching and all these things. He said, oh, you're very relaxed. He said, very, very good. Good material for Qigong, you know. Then he asked me, you just stand here. I go to my room. I said, what do I do? You just stand, you know. Just relax. I went to his room. He went to his room. He activated Qi through the wall. And I also moved, you know. So I couldn't believe all these things. How does this thing work, you know? So I left. Then after a few months, I called him up. I said, Master, I would like to come and visit you and stay for 3 days. He said, why do you want to stay 3 days? There's nothing for you to watch here. I said, no, just chit chat with you. Oh, you look like a nice guy. Yes, you can come. So while I was there, I saw him doing healing on all kinds of people. And people from Japan, people from Korea, and all of them moved. So I said, is that how you do the healing? He said, yes. He said, you see, when I activate Qi, the part that moves are the blockages. You know. So what I do is I clear the blockages, and then I energize their Qi, you know, improve their yin and balance. So, you know, the next day I asked him, I would like to learn, would you teach me? And he said, nobody wants to learn things like that. It's very, very dull, you know. It's not something that you do. It's almost like meditation, you know. You sit down and, you know, you focus your mind and then you move very slowly and limpidly until your breathing goes down. When your breathing goes down, your heartbeat goes down and you go into a state of stillness or meditation. Then chemical reaction takes place in the body. I seldom teach, but I use it for healing. I'm a Chinese doctor, I use it for healing. And that's how I heal people. So I said, would you like to teach me? You know, I would like to be your student. He looked at me, you look quite okay, you know. Tomorrow morning, come to the garden, I'll teach you some moves, you know, so that you can practice at home. So I went, I taught me a few moves by moving my palm, just like this and that. Went home. 6 months later, went back to him, check again. Oh, quite okay, but not as good. Went back home again, came back 6 months later, you know, until a couple of years down the road. Then he told me, he said, okay, you know, now you are good. You can go and teach away. So I was so surprised. I said, are you sure I can teach? I said, yes. I can feel your energy a little. Oh, you really can feel my energy? He said, yes. He said, then during a time in Hong Kong, you know, when he was teaching, and that was after 5 years, brought 3 students in front of me, stand there. Said, Dennis, you just go and do your Hanyang moves. After I moved for a few seconds, 3 of them all moved. They moved. Yeah? Then he told all the students that, you see, you know, if there's nothing in our art, these 3 persons won't move. The reason why they move is because the energy has come out from Dennis' body and then he is able to project the chi out. This is a very good example for you all to follow, you know. And that is my story, how I got started. And after 5 years, he eventually asked me whether I would like to become a disciple. He said that he's got no disciple. And of course, I said yes. And then we had a ceremony, I think 7 years. 2 years after that, in Singapore, and was inducted into Hanyang Louis Gong, and the rest is history. Then I went around the world, teaching everywhere, doing healing, and that's how I got into Qigong by accident. Thank you.
How about you? Tell me your origin story.
Okay, well, I was lucky in that sense. I started at 11 because my backyard was a kung fu class. My father was a master, he had a grandmaster. So I used to sit on the stoop at the staircase, and the step and watch the adults practice when I was younger until I was 11. It says, okay, now's the time you can join them. And that's how I started. But I started with 5 ancestors. Okay, so that was a martial art. And I did that all the way until university, you know. And that was my interest because, as a youngster, and that was the peak of the Bruce Lee, era, the Kung Fu era. So, of course, everything was about martial art. You talk about sparring, fighting, and all that. And that carried on until my university days. And then I came back, started a career, and much later on, a family. So, I sort of slowed down on my Kung Fu then, I just maintained my own personal practice. I hardly attended classes. And then I sort of moved overseas, came back to Kuala Lumpur, and I was a so-called bachelor, all right? My family stayed in Australia at the time, so staying alone with my parents. There's not much to do at home. I'm not the type that go out partying and drinking, so I decided to go back to our old club, the Gun, our Gun. And I found that the atmosphere there has changed a bit. So I didn't continue practice there also because there were not many people practicing martial arts. Most of them into Qigong. And at that time, my father, together with his grandmaster, his master, Grandmaster Chi Kim Tong, was in the process of distilling the two Nei Gong arts of Wu Chi and Lo Han Rui into a new format, I would say, for Yan Xiao Gong, because these two arts were quite complex and quite difficult to learn. So they wanted to create something that would be more suitable for the modern context, right? Because the old way of learning these things are you go and stay in the monastery for quite a number of years, right? But of course, in the modern lifestyle, very few people could afford that. So my father and Grandmaster Chi wanted to create something that was quick to learn, quick to practice, yet was able to give quick results. So out of that was born what was called Yan Xiao Gong. Of course, at the beginning, I was not interested. I said, these are for old men, old people. And until one day, my dad literally, he told me, first of all, well, you reach a stage of development in your martial arts, right? And to go further, you have to teach. At that time, I wasn't interested in teaching because I felt that teaching took away from my own training time. So I was literally dragged together with him into a seminar to teach Yan Xiao Gong. Of course, I had to prepare myself for it, I learned up the forms and I practiced it until I was familiar with it. And during the seminar there, I helped him to teach, And lo and behold, you can say whatever wonderful things. When I started teaching, I discovered that, wow, there's a lot of stuff in this art, right? And partly I think because of the gestation period, right? I already had this kind of long 30 years worth of foundation in the other arts, right? So when I start doing the movements, I begin to feel things moving inside, and things are beginning to happen. So I started exploring on that. So that was one part of it, right? This process of self-discovery. And almost about the same time, I wanted to refine the methods of teaching because it took me about 30 to 40 years to get to where I was. I was at a certain level, and as I wanted to teach, I asked myself this question: does it mean that if I teach now, my students are going to take 30 years to achieve, to get to the state where I am? And to me, I think that was not a good answer, right? So I wanted to look for a process that would shorten the learning period, And my aim at that time, I just set an arbitrary figure. I said, if somebody can achieve something in 10 years, I want to make that happen in 3 years. So I was looking for a factor of 3 sort of improvement in terms of learning speed. So it took me almost 10 years, a lot of research, a lot of a lot of it involved what they call hacking my own body. You know? I come from a IT background, and I think the word hacking made a lot of sense because in hacking, what you try to do is break things up into little details and try to figure out how it works. See? So that's what I did. I hacked what I already have in my body, my skills, and of course there were partners in other Heong, right? My martial art brothers who helped me a lot with that, you see, and I have to thank them for that, for helping me through this process. And after about 10 years, I started to put all these things that I found out together, and I started teaching, you see. And well, things took off from there, and these teaching methods proved to be successful. I was able to produce some students with very high level of skills within a short period of time, and then I started teaching more and more on the Yan Shao Kung. I think the other thing that would really motivated me in teaching the Yan Shao Kung as opposed to the martial arts, I found that I could help people with this, people with health problems and so on, And there were quite a few cases like where through learning of Yan Shao Kung, they were able to improve their well-being and health so much, see. And I'd like to mention maybe one particular case. This was a sister of a good friend of mine. She contracted a lung infection and went for an operation, and they actually took out part of her lung. It was that badly infected. And she was recuperating, and my friend was helping the sister recuperate by walking in the park, in the Botanics Garden in Singapore. So I happened to be there to teach a Qigong class. So my friend said, "Can you do something to help my sister?" Okay? So at that time, I dare not commit. I said, I'll try and do what I can, right? And she had to use an oxygen concentrator, a little machine, right? With a tube to feed oxygen in her nose. And she could not walk more than like 50 meters and just sit down and take a rest. So I taught her the Yan Shao Kung. And she was quite diligent because she had done a bit of Tai Chi before in the past, right? So she had the discipline and perseverance to practice. And 3 months later, when I went back to Singapore, I asked my friend, "Hey, how's your sister?" And he said, "Wow, she has wonderful recovery." He said, "She doesn't need the machine anymore. She can walk, 100 meters plus without resting." And I thought, wow, that was fantastic, amazing results within 3 months, you see. And the other amazing thing was in Singapore, they're quite strict with you. If you have a health condition, they suspend your driving license. So it was very inconvenient of her, she couldn't drive. But after 10 months after she started the Yan Shao Kung practice, she passed a full medical and got back her license. So you can imagine that 3-month milestone and a 10-month milestone, It's amazing. And I was quite, shocked by that in that sense because, because I didn't expect that, frankly, But that was the case. So there were a few other cases like that. And I found that, wow, with Yan Shao Kung, I could really help people with their well-being. And that's really what also motivated me and drove me more towards the healing side rather than the martial art side. See, I still do teach the martial art, but my emphasis now is more towards the healing. Right? And I think, that's the story of it.
Thanks for watching. I hope to continue to present content on YouTube. I hope you liked this, and let me know. My goal is that whatever I've learned in this life, I need to pass it on. And I think my friends, Master Yap and Master Dennis, feel the same way. They want to pass on what they've learned. So without that, there's no continuity of these arts. Anyway, have a great day or weekend, and I'll see you later.